What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming. I'm a fight guy, I'm a Forbes contributor, and I also write for Heavy.com. We're talking UFC Fight Night 171 or UFC Fight Night Smith versus Teixeira, depending on what you want to call it. It is a pretty solid card. The second card in 6 days, second card of 3 in 6 days for the UFC. And so we're still in the prelims. We're going over each fight at a time. I'm going to say right now, if you have not yet subscribed, please do so now. Constant combat sports content. We're talking UFC today, of course, but we also talk boxing and bare knuckle fighting championship. So hit that subscribe button as well as the notifications bell so that you'll know when new videos drop. So we're talking Hunter Azure against Brian Boom Kelleher. Hunter Azure is making his UFC debut 7-0. He hails from the MMA lab in Arizona. He actually is from Montana. He's the second UFC fighter from Montana, if you count Sugar Sean O'Malley, who also came through the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, just as Azure has. Azure is a big-time wrestler in the state of Montana, very accomplished in that area. And as we know, Brian Kelleher brings a myriad of skills, but one of his biggest things is his submission game. So this is a pretty interesting debut fight for Azure, and I think it really speaks to how much the UFC thinks of him by putting him in with somebody like Kelleher in his first fight. So we're going to see how this one goes on, but we're going to take a look at these odds first. Right now, the odds makers are really liking Hunter Azure. He's a minus 190 favorite. Kelleher's a plus 165 underdog. I'm sure he'll take that personally if you consider what he's done already in the UFC. So we'll see how that shakes out. Kelleher is coming off a victory in his last fight. So from a physical standpoint, you can easily see Hunter Azure is the bigger guy. He's he's taller, 5'8" compared to 5'6" for Kelleher. The reach is much longer, 70.5 inches to 66 inches. The leg length is a little bit is close, but it's still in favor of Hunter Azure. I would also say that Hunter Azure is probably the better natural athlete. If you watch him fight, he's pretty explosive. And you can see when he actually does shoot for takedowns, he really explodes into those doubles and the single legs, and he's able to do some things. He's really mostly respected for his wrestling game, but we've been seeing a little bit of a development on the striking side. So we'll talk about the statistical advantages, and it's always difficult to see that whenever you're seeing a fighter making their UFC debut. And I know he was on the Tuesday Night Contender Series, but for as far as main roster, so we know that he's a fantastic wrestler, but we'll need to get a little bit more data to figure out just how proficient he is at takedowns from the naked eye without adding analytics to it. He does attack and go for those takedowns pretty well. Kelleher is just a slick guy overall, very high fight IQ. And so his defense is generally pretty solid on the feet as well as obviously on the ground. So I don't know who's going to have the edge from a statistical standpoint. But if we just talk about from skill level, if we're looking at striking, Kelleher's best attributes are not his striking. Does he have the ability to crack a guy every once in a while? He does, but I think that most of his striking generally is done to set up the grappling and to set up the submission opportunities. Hunter Azure doesn't get a lot of respect for his striking, but I'm noticing as I looked at his fight with Jaime Hernandez, he really is delivering a lot of power in the strikes that he does land. He hit Hernandez with 2 really hard body kicks that really kind of folded him up, threw some really hard, solid uppercuts, even though some of it was a bit flawed. And I'll talk about that in 1 second. But from a pure power standpoint, I'd give Azure the edge from in striking. But in striking defense, I definitely would give that to Kelleher. Azure comes in with hands down a little bit too much, doesn't move the head as much as he should, which a lot of this is a common bad habit for wrestlers because a lot of the wrestlers have the striking power, but they don't necessarily have the fluidity in the striking game to be elusive and to maybe put shots together in combinations. They throw one strike hard at a time and don't necessarily get the heads off the center line and other things that are usually required to be a complete striker. So Hunter Azure falls into that category a bit, but if he does connect, he connects with some ferocity. From a grappling standpoint, you'd have to flip this a couple different ways, right? So pure wrestling, I would say Azure has the advantage. decorated amateur wrestler, and just physically stronger. So when you start getting to a point where maybe skill levels and training is somewhat similar, then you go into the physical attributes, and the bigger, stronger fighter would have an edge there. But if you flip that to submissions, then now you have to wonder, because Kelleher is so crafty and able to flip and turn so many different things into submission opportunities. And also, when he does take a fighter down and he gets top position, as we saw against Ode Osborne, I believe, in his last fight, he's able to really control guys on top. Now, Ode Osborne is nowhere near as accomplished on the ground as Hunter Azure is, but from a technique standpoint, Kelleher was really impressive in that situation and in some others. We've also seen him get some nice submission victories over opponents in the past too. So this is a little bit of a 50-50 from a grappling standpoint, because I don't want to disrespect Kelleher, and I know coming in everybody's kind of really amped up about Hunter's wrestling, and with good reason. But I don't know if he has as significant of an advantage on the ground as it might appear. We'll see how that actually plays out. From an intangible standpoint, Hunter comes in super confident. He's 7-0, younger guy, getting a lot of respect from Dana White, from the UFC. Earned his contract on the Tuesday Night Contender Series. And so he comes in pretty confident. Now, Kelleher seems to relish the underdog role. He seems to just bask in it, and you can never count him out. Of course, he's 20-10. He's already taken 10 defeats, but you can just never count this guy out. And it seems like the more they try to position him as something of a gatekeeper, the more he takes really, comes into fights with a chip on his shoulder. And I'm having a feeling he's going to come into this one the same way. So from an intangible standpoint, both guys have some motivation here. Kelleher is coming off a win, and of course, Hunter has not lost as of yet. But we have seen this similar situation where we've had a fighter come in from Tuesday Night Contender Series, run into a veteran who is literally waiting for him. Like, yeah, so you're supposed to be the next big thing. And then they run into an issue. So it's going to really depend on how mentally prepared Hunter Azure is. He can't be overconfident, because if he is, Kelleher can catch him slipping. My official prediction for this one, though, is going to be Hunter Azure. But I'm going to tell you, I'm a little tentative here, because I got a lot of respect for Kelleher. I got a lot of respect for the fact that I know he's going to be waiting on this guy, because he's going to be aware of these odds. And he's going to see that he's an underdog here against somebody who has accomplished as much as he has in the game. But that said, I still like Azure to win the fight. I like him to win it by decision. There's a possibility, I think, for a late stoppage, but I do think he wins this fight by unanimous decision. I think he gets top control, is able to control him there. I think he may hurt Kelleher with a couple shots here or there. Probably will cut him, but I think Kelleher will probably survive the fight, get through, but Hunter will win by a decision. So that's my official prediction for the fight. I appreciate you watching as always. I remind you, if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. And also make sure you click that notifications bell and check in the upper right hand corner so you can see the other odds and prediction videos for UFC Fight Night Smith versus Teixeira. As always, I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.